I haven't seen it all. Every time I go out, I see more. So I've seen probably 2,500 properties in town. So I keep on wanting to go out and see more and more. So it's really a learning experience, and that's what makes my passion grow, is seeing trees and understanding them and having them talk to me, and me conversing with the trees. So with this talk, it's going to be very short. I'm teaching a class, and I usually talk 3 hours. Sometimes I don't take a break, and sometimes it goes over 3 hours. And I try to put this into 45 minutes. So I did just the topics that are really important. So that's why we're going to go through the topics: water, mulch, soils. Those are the 3 basics that we have to focus on here in Taos, New Mexico. So I want to just focus on them, talk through my talk, probably go more than 30 minutes, but I'll try to open it up at the end for questions and answers. So if it goes over, anybody wants to stay and ask me more questions, feel free. Except for that guy over there, he can't say. Anyway, I try to keep it light, and I really appreciate everybody showing up. Thank you very much, and inviting me for this talk. So with that being said, water, Bob just talked about water. I had 3/4 of an inch in town here. So we're getting the first of our moisture. It's a little bit better than last year, the spring event, because last year, if you can remember, January through May, we had no moisture at all. And it was very, very scary, because that's the growing time for trees and plants. They grow top and bottom, and all of a sudden, when you don't have our natural rains, which are really beneficial to all our plant community, then it's really a deficit. So we've been in this deficit for the last 18 months, and this is a blessing to have the rain this time. So irrigation systems is the first thing I'm going to mention real quick. One thing I find out when I go to properties is nobody inspects them. They turn them on, or they have their landscaper turn them on, and they think that's it. You should go out weekly to check your irrigation system. They're not foolproof, especially with all the minerals in our water. So please, that's one thing I find out when I do a soil moisture test, is there's not enough moisture around the trees, and some of the bubblers aren't working, or the netafin is worn out over the last 10 years. So check your irrigation systems. Sucker hose instead of soaker hose. So those are what I am right now. So it's supposed to be soaker hose, and I thought I proofread this at least 5 times. So this is my joke of the day. So if you have a sucker hose, they work better at night. And the reason why that is that they're designed that way. A lot of people put them out. They say, I watered my tree with my soaker hose for 2 or 3 hours, and my tree didn't get enough water. They're not designed for that. They're designed to run 8 hours. So if you want to get 1 to 2 inches of moisture, turn your soaker hoses on at night in the evening and let them run all night. And that'll really give your tree a really deep watering. And that's what we're focused here in New Mexico, is because of our clay soils, you want a deep watering for your trees. Yes?
I just want to add about the soaker hoses. It's very important what the diameter is. We bought soaker hoses to use, and the diameter is so big that we can only leave them on for 10 minutes.
Okay, that's a good...
It's not, you have to look and see what it's doing.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if they're 3/4 of an inch or an inch, they're too big. 1/2 inch is probably, thank you for that question. 1/2 inch is ideal to put around your trees, because if you get bigger ones, then it doesn't, the water comes out and that's it. So anyway, thank you for that. Gentle flow metal bubblers. Do anybody know what those are? And I forgot to bring one. You can buy them at Ace. They're actually, you hook them onto the end of your hose, and we use them when we plant trees, because it doesn't tear up the newly planted trees, and it comes out really slow. All you have to do, if you're working in your garden, hook that up to your end, put it at a tree. You'll probably have to move it around the tree. Always, water needs to be on all sides of the tree, north, east, south, and west. Everybody knows that. And just leave it on, and it comes out pretty fast, even though it's slow. So it's a great device to water your trees with, okay? and you can buy them at Ace. And if you look up that name online, you'll find them. That's why I put it up there. So I didn't put up anything else. Hand watering, I have a lot of people talk about hand watering. They hand water their trees. That is fine. But if you have quite a number of trees, that's a big chore, because you want deep water and you want to get a lot of water to each tree. And there's another slide later that tells you every inch of caliber, you need so much water per tree. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So that's really important. If you hand water, number one, do not put it by the trunk, okay? There is no roots at the trunk except tap roots, and only 10% of the trees in the world have tap roots, okay? So if you're watering at the trunk, you're not watering it in the right spot, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, because you're supposed to be watering out at the drip line, which is the end of the branches. Mother Nature made that because when it rains, they get the moisture in the right spot. It's in the center of the absorption roots, and it really, really is where you should be watering your trees, and we'll talk about that again. Amounts of water, like I just mentioned. Amounts of water, for every 1 inch in caliber, your tree needs at least 10 gallons of slow, deep watering, okay? This PowerPoint is going to be available for everybody. I made it also in a PDF, and I'm going to send it to Bob again. I updated it again, so I wanted to get it out to you all, because there's a lot of PDFs and information on this that I want to share with all of you. So if you can't see the screen or you take a picture of it, you'll get it in an email. Okay? Example, a tree is 2 inches in diameter, needs 20 gallons of water, and then it says where to water. Around the tree, at the drip line, the end of the branches. That is the center of the absorption roots. The absorption roots is also called the feeder roots. So that's very, very important. How often? Deciduous trees, March, twice a month. And right now I'm going off of what we had this past winter, and we'll talk about wintertime, it's on here, is March, twice a month, starting in April through September, once a week. It's really important to get your trees once a week, at least some moisture, because what you'll learn down the line on this talk is soil microorganisms need the moisture to stay alive. So if you keep your moisture around 50%, and we'll talk about how you do that, then your trees and your microorganisms that support the trees will be all happy. And my saying is, happy trees, healthy trees are happy trees. So that's something that I always say to all my clients. So October through November, twice a month. And what I tell people is, if we have a really dry November, it's better to water as late as possible in November, because a wet freeze is better than a dry freeze, okay? What that does is, if you water right before the first big freeze, it will insulate the roots. So if it's dry, it may hinder the roots if it's too dry during the winter, if your roots are dry. Because roots will stay active with the soil temperatures getting down to 40 degrees. So you want to water as late as possible in November to get that freeze and have the ground really frozen with moisture in it. Okay? Then December, January, and February, once a month. And everybody knows that we'll put out a thing in the paper under the environmental section that you should be watering your trees once a month. And we're here in the Rockies. Our moisture in the winter is almost nil anymore down here in town and out on the mesas. So please water your trees once a month.
Quick rule of thumb that I learned from Gordon Tooley about dormant watering in winter is 1 inch of water per month. And the way I calculate that is, if you get, we have 10% snow, meaning 10% of the snow is actually water, and you get 10 inches of snow, well then that's 1 inch of water.
That's a good
So
count.
if you get 10 inches worth of snow in any given month, guess what? You don't necessarily have to water as long as it's melted.
Okay.
But if you get less than that, then that's the trigger, hey, add some water.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mike. That's a good point, because I heard that it takes, for 1 inch of snow, it's 12 inches of snow here, because our snow is so dry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's 10 or 12, it's still, if it's less than that, water your trees.
Still pretty good about that.
So evergreen trees, March through November, twice a month, December, January, and February, once a month. So evergreens seem to be able to store moisture better than our deciduous trees, and yeah, they never go dormant. Evergreens never go dormant. They're always semi-dormant. So even in the winter, they're active. So you have to give them some moisture, because they're transpiring every night and during the day. So you have to really think about evergreens. They're not foolproof, but you really have to water evergreens and really be considerate of them, because I see a lot of evergreens. I was at a property 3 weeks ago that had 10% moisture for their evergreens. That won't survive an evergreen tree, 10%. I have a soil moisture meter, and we'll talk about that maybe in the next slide. Yep. At least I know some of the slides. Anyway, facts to consider. One thing when I'm talking about water is your soil profile. And the reason why I mention that is soil profiles are different even from one tree to the next. And I see this because I go to a property, 3 trees are doing fine, the 4th one is dying, they don't know why. I take a moisture meter out, there's a big difference on that last one because they're not getting proper water, and the soil profile is different. So we have heavy clays here. So you got to really consider the soil profile on your property. And the best way to test your soil profile, you take a big long screwdriver, a big long one. I'm trying to talk like Gordon Tooley, a big one, and you just throw it in the ground. And if it bounces out of the ground, you have a lot of hard compaction. You need to start mulching your trees because that's not going to help your trees at all. So that's one rule of thumb is if you got a lot of compaction, then you really have to focus on softening that soil, and we'll talk about that later. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. Soil moisture meter, you can buy them online. And I recommend the Lincoln 9-inch soil moisture meter. And I say have the readings read at 50% for your trees. But that's a good general rule of thumb. And the reason why for the 9 inches, because your roots are 6 to 12 inches underneath the ground. So if you have a 9-inch and you're pushing it in the ground, it'll really catch what kind of moisture you can have. And what I found out is you can push it down 4 inches and maybe it'll read 30%. Push it down if you can, because the diode's on the end, you may break it. Push it down a little bit more, and you'll be amazed how that needle rises up the lower you go in the soil. So it's really a good device. And if you buy one of them, and I'm going to look around who's really young here, they'll last the rest of your life. They're really good. I'm not kidding. You could be 12 years old in this room and it'll last you because it's really good. It's battery operated, okay? Rain gauge. A lot of people here in town have them. I have one. I know Janet has a great one. Most people have them. It's a good way to tell you how much moisture you got. And I found out this year when we had that snow for 6 to 8 inches, I left it in my rain gauge, and when the sun hit it, it got down to only about a ½ an inch of moisture. So that was the indicator that there's not much moisture in 6 to 8 inches of snow, okay? Irrigation system, highly recommended. How much is the system watering the output is really important. So if you have bubblers, they're adjustable. So my idea is make sure you check your moisture after you water trees, 24 hours after you water them, with a moisture meter or some device to see how much moisture got into your soils. And like I said, some soil profiles are different. So it's really important to check that 24 hours after, even with the moisture meter. I wait 24 hours, then I check it, okay? Tree location on your property, very important. Way you water a tree on the southwest of your house is different than you do on the east side of your house because of the intensity of the sun. So with that being said, when you check your moisture, if it's a moisture meter, your hand, your fingers, go on each direction, north, east, south, and west, because the sun comes around the tree and dries out the soil differently. So you have to take that in consideration when you're checking your soil moisture. These are all common sense, and I think trees are very common sense things for me, and they're really understandable if you listen to them. So, tree type is another thing. The difference between a pinon pine and a blue spruce is totally different for moisture. So you have to really read about soil profiles, tree profiles, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And I'll just digress here a little bit. Tree profiles, if you buy a tree, you should always look up the tree profiles first. And the reason for that is you find out the profile of the tree and then plant it in the right place, the right tree. It's called the right tree for the right location or right place. So it's really important that you do your homework first. And there's another website that's not on my slideshow. It's called Schmidt Nursery. And if you want to write that down, they have PDFs of most of the trees that are grown here in the Southwest. So Schmidt Nursery, go Google that, and they have different PDFs of trees. You put in the name of the tree, and they print out a PDF, and they're really 2-pagers, and they're really good. I really like them because they kind of give you a general idea of height, width, moisture requirements, location maybe, like light shade, partial shade, more shade, full sun. So it's a really good PDF if you want to go to Schmidt Nursery. You have to Google that. So mulch, yes, I'm glad I got that one. That's the most. Every talk I've been to for the last 10 years, most of the professors that talk about trees, the best thing to help your trees is mulch. Okay, and there's all different kind of mulches, but ideally, if you do a mixture of wood chips, straw, and old manure, that's a Gordon Tooley recipe because you can find them locally and you mix them together and you feed your trees with that mixture. It's the best balance for your trees, okay? The only thing I've read about for mulch is you shouldn't use cedar chips on fruit trees. It actually unbalances the fruit trees, okay? So you got to really watch the cedar chips and fruit trees. But let me go through this. For small trees, the depth is 4 to 6 inches. And the reason why I say 4 to 6 inches is you want to try to keep that moisture in the ground as long as possible. It will get through that 4 to 6 inches when it rains and stuff, and it really decomposes here pretty slow. So you can mulch the trees twice a year or 3 times, and the mulch will stay around it. So and the moisture will stay. And like I said on the bottom, organic mulches reduces water loss, cools the soils, and increases fertility and promotes healthy root development. Plus, plus, plus. Gotta have mulch for your trees. I go to a lot of properties, and that's the first thing I see is no mulch. I tell people that have tree problems to send me a picture. I tell them to send me 2 pictures, one of the tree and one of the site, because it's really important to see that site. Because it could be just a site problem that they're not taking care of the ground, which the soil organisms live in, the microorganisms, and they help the tree. So sometimes that's kind of a try that first type thing to help take the stress off tree. And another famous saying is stress equals pest. And the funny thing about that is that's not funny. Really, it's not funny because we're getting more and more bugs. I've seen different bugs the last 2 years I haven't seen in Taos in 40 years. So what happened is we don't have the hard winters we used to have, and they don't die off through the winters. It doesn't get down to 10 and 20 below, where it used to sometimes kill off that nesting population. So it actually is hurting us in more than just the dryness. It's the temperatures also. Okay?
Got a question.
Yes.
So you said grass, and I understand that, but what about other, green mulches, clovers or whatever?
Okay.
In your particularly with fruit.
Oh, thank you for that question. You should always use two kinds of mulches. You plant plants around your trees that you can mulch for green mulch. And you lay them down because they grow from the spring to summer. You do green mulch and you lay it around the tree. That promotes bacteria into the soils. And you want that balance. So then you add the brown mulch, it's called, and then that's fungal. So the two of them together will make a better mulch. I'm glad you brought that up. And I planted a lot of orchards, and I do both. I do a lot of the fast-growing perennials, and Micah has really taught me a lot about both permaculture and stuff, and planting the right plants as companion plants around trees. And I'm trying to do that more and more and convince my clients to actually do cover crops and plants around their trees. But it's really hard to find a company that can deliver you deciduous for deciduous. There is one person in town that does that. He keeps his deciduous separate. He keeps his evergreen separate. And also, if he's doing enough fruit tree pruning, he keeps that separate. So that would be kind of the greatest thing for fruit trees. Okay, and another thing about mulch. You got natural mulch falling down on the ground every year from your trees. And it's really sad when I go around and I see people raking up the leaves and they're taking away the best food source for the tree and needles of the evergreen. So it's really, really important to try to maintain what falls off your trees and keep them around the tree. It's called the root zone of the trees because it's really important to have that natural food source. Thank you for that. So I have different sized trees with different ideas, and the reason why you go 1 to 3 feet past the drip line of the tree is what I was telling you. The drip line is the center of the absorption root. So I'm just going to give you a quick example. A tree 20 foot tall puts out 40 feet of roots, 20 feet all the way around it. So if you go out to the drip line, there's still going to be more feeder roots past the drip line. Mother Nature designed it that way. So that's why I said at least put it 1 to 3 feet past the drip line, because it'll still feed the trees. If you can, because some of them by sidewalks or by your house, so sometimes you can't do that radius around the tree. Okay? Does that all make sense? Mulch, every professor talks about mulch in their talk from now, for trees' health. So. Well, that's a good question. The only thing I heard in some of my talks is the cardboard that they produce now has a lot of chemicals in it. So, yeah, so it's a whole different theory than it was years ago. But the only thing it does is it slows down that decomposition. She didn't mention in her talk that it's bad for the trees, but it changes that sheet mulching. It may stay around longer and not decompose as fast. Okay, that's the only bad thing I heard about sheet mulching. But I think it's good. I went to her property about a few weeks ago, and she's doing both sheet mulching and wood chips and mulch on top of it. And that's a plus because it really reduces some of that weed population. But what I tell people is if you have grass growing around your trees, don't dig up the grass. Please, because the grass roots and the tree roots are kind of interconnected down there. So what you want to do is just mulch it really deep, 6 inches or more, to really keep that light from hitting around the tree to the ground, and then it'll slowly, over the years, you'll outbeat the grass. Okay? And if you're a landscaper, you have a permanent job coming back with more mulch and helping out your client. But it's also helping out the trees and the soil organisms. Okay? Good statement. Soil amendments. This is a big one that I've kind of been researching for the last 10 years, and I have one of the best books on the market. It's called the Soil Owner's Manual. Okay? If you're really into your soils and you really want to understand it, he really talks about it I call it user-friendly. I understand it, so a lot of people in this room can understand it. It's really basic knowledge, and he goes in detail. And it's really a good book to buy and have it as a reference book, or go through it. I have it online on audiobook, so I listen to it all the time. Okay, and it's made, John Sitka is the name of the author. Jon Sitka. Okay, since I'm talking about books, I got one more. See, I get to walk around a little bit. This is the one I've been using for my tree care class. It's called Plant Health Care for Woody Ornamentals. This was published in '97. And so I've been using this book for over 25 years. So I really love this book because I go through the book, I teach my class, I try to introduce new research because this is from '97, but it has 12 different authors in it. And it's really a good book because they all have different concepts about different topics. And anybody that takes my class, we learn a lot in 3 hours. I'll tell you. I try to share that a lot. And then I go home and think, I should have talked about more. And I always come back for the next year and talk about more. So anyway, this is a great book, and it's on this slide, this book. So soil amendments are materials added to the soil to improve the physical properties, structure, water, retention, aeration, nutritional holding capacities. They're designed to enhance the soil environment. That's what we really want to focus about, is the soil environment on a long-term basis. I don't like the idea of using strong fertilizers. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because you're unbalancing the soil organism community down there. You don't want to disturb that. And it helps the roots grow deeper, easier access to nutrients. Soil amendments feed the soil microorganisms, where fertilizers feed the plant. So when you buy a fertilizer and you're having a problem with your plant, first thing you should do is a soil sample. Okay, and if you go to the Taos County agent office, they have how to do a soil sample, and it's very easy. And you can send it in to the New Mexico Extension agent, and it really helps you understand what's in your soils. And the way they do it is you put 20. Say you want to plant 3 trees in this area, and you're talking about a 100 square foot area. Then you take samples, 20 samples around that, put it in a bucket, mix it up. Lay it out on soils on a piece of paper for 24 hours, put it in a bag, and then take it back to the Taos County agent, and then he can test it for the NPK and some of the micro and macronutrients. Okay? These are the ones that I've used over the years. I use Humates, and there's a great product that comes from around Placitas, New Mexico. It's mined in Placitas, New Mexico, and it's Humates. And what I tell people, and I usually say this to a 5th grade class, but I'll say it to you guys, it's like a dinosaur died in the ground and they're digging it back up and putting it in a bag and letting us use it for organic matter around our properties. So it's really a good product. It's a granular, it dissolves slowly, it feeds the soil slowly, but like I said, it has one of the highest organic matter contents that I've found. And that's a good way because it's a granular. You can also buy humic acid. Humic acid is another product that really gets the organisms working in the soils. Liquid molasses. People have problems with iron here because iron binds in high pH and clay soils. So liquid molasses, horticulture liquid molasses, not your one that you have in your cupboard that says grandma on it. It's horticulture molasses or agriculture molasses. And it's made for you to put on the soil, and it feeds the organism. And I like that product a lot. I'm getting warm. Worm castings. The best thing you can do when you dig a hole is find worms. All right, that's like a plus. You go, all right, this is a good spot. Or you can buy worm casting and feed your soils with them. Okay. Compost aged manure, you can buy that online. Seaweed, kelp, those have a lot of nutrients in them because they come from the sea, so it's another good product I use. No NPK in any of these so far. mycorrhizal fungi. Mike has talked about that just a little bit, and what we're finding out is, like you said, deciduous trees use one kind of microorganisms, and then evergreens can use, and they're endo and ecto. So my mix that I use is called Myco Apply Max, and it's a mycorrhizal root enhancer. And what it is, it's almost like what you hear on people talking, it's a soup mix. It has lots of microorganisms, a lot of fungi in it. So what I like about it is the plants, the organisms that are down there will use some of that product. And to me, some of that product is better than no product, because our microorganisms are really stressed here in our soil profiles. So that's my take. Anyway, anybody use Yum Yum Mix? And that's a good product. They say that it is organic, and it does have NPK in it. The only thing I haven't looked up, and I did this a few days ago, is what the NPK is in Yum Yum Mix. So Micah, do you know what the NPK? What I suggest, and it's on the bottom of the slide, nitrogen should not be higher than 5%. Okay? The reason for that is they find out that unbalances the soil a lot if it's a high nitrogen product. Okay? It really hurts the plants if you're using a high nitrogen product, because all of a sudden the tree takes it up. What happens is the tree says, oh, good, I got all this nitrogen source, I'm going to grow really fast and bigger. Okay, it does that. Next thing you have is more insects, because it unbalances that ecology. All of a sudden you have a lot of growth. Insects know that. So those are going to attack your tree because they have a lot of green growth. I would say one thing they don't regulate is things in bags in nurseries. One of these professors talked about that's the only part of the nursery industry that is unregulated. So if you buy bag stuff, and Yum Yum Mix is pretty reputable, I would just look on the bag and see what it says.
Yeah.
Yes?
I just looked it up, it said 211.
211. Use Yum Yum Mix. Yummy, yummy. So anyway, I said fertilizer feeds the plant. Fertilizer, if you use it, use slow release fertilizers with low NPK. Learning about tree stress. So I spelled that right. Factors about tree stress. It all starts at planting procedures. Okay? If a tree is not planted correctly, you're going to have a stressed tree even in its older age. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I have 3 properties I can tell you about. Where the tree comes from is a big issue. So if a tree comes from the forest, and you should ask the landscaper, where did you get this tree? Okay? There are places that you can get good quality trees. But if you get a gentleman that digs them up himself in the forest, the first thing you should say is, are your trees tagged north? And what happens is a lot of trees are planted and turned around 90, 180 degrees. So all of a sudden their natural environment, where they used to be on the north, is now on the south. I've seen trees really stressed when they're turned around by somebody that gets them out of the forest. Okay? So that's the one thing I mentioned about people that get it from the forest. When the trees were planted. I plant in spring and fall. And the reason for that is because summers, trees don't grow. They maintain our heat. I mean, it really gets hot here, so I don't plant in the summer because there's no top growth, there's no bottom growth. If there is, it's very little. And the trees, you're transplanting it, and you're picking the spot for it, so it's already stressed where you put it. So you really have to consider not planting during I stop planting after May because it gets too hot in June, July, and August. Then in the fall, I start planting again. And I've lost trees planted in the summer years ago when I had a landscaping in the 80s here. I just don't do that anymore. I think it really hurts our tree population here, or the trees themselves. History of your tree care. So when you go to a property, and I'm going to use myself as an example, I've been caring for these 2 properties for 10 to 15 years. And all of a sudden, these trees are more stressed now than they were that I've seen over the last 10 or 15 years. I'll just say it that way. And so what I try to find out is, why is this tree that I cared for, these trees, stressed out? So what I did is I called the owner. I found out where they came from, who planted them, and what time of the year. All three were negatives. So they planted them incorrectly. They dug them with a backhoe, stuck them in the ground, and trees were too deep in the ground, number one. Number two, they planted them in the summer. And number three, they dug them up in the summer and planted them in the summer. Okay? So all three of those went against this tree, but I didn't see it for 10 or 15 years. This year, I have scale. I have, first time I ever seen in Taos, willow borer. I have a 30-foot willow tree that has willow borer now. And I've never seen it, the Salix family have willow borders for a willow. So that's the first time I've seen that insect. And then I have some that are just stressed, and we're trying to fix them. And one property, I'm having them excavate. It's called root excavation because they're all planted too deep. 40 trees planted too deep. So some of them are perfect, but some of them have not handled that transition being planted too deep. So when they plant it with a backhoe, they dig up the hole. If they don't have a good backhoe guy, he digs it real deep, puts the tree in, it's too deep, we'll backfill it, and we'll put the tree in. Fine for the tree for the first couple of years. The bigger they get, the heavier they get. So all of a sudden, this tree starts to sink over the years. And you'll go, oh my God, my tree, look, the branches are coming out of the ground. How'd that happen? Because the hole was dug too deep, okay? Then you also have to consider our climate, which we talked about a little bit, the history and the watering and feeding history. So all that we talked about right now, it's all together. You have to think of urban tree care as this big picture of these different parts that we have to focus on. And I really like to go to a property and kind of tell people or educate them or help the property out to help do better. So I think I'm almost done, but I have a whole list. Yes, I gotta go back one. References, local references. You'll get this. I don't think I have much time to talk about all these guys, but I have the landscaping companies that I deal with. I have professional tree companies and tree advisors. And you see, one thing is, Will, the county agent, is a great tree guy. He is wonderful. He's the first county agent in 40 years that we connect really well. He loves trees, so he's a great guy to call out. But anybody under the tree companies, you can call them out. And most of these people, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I help educate. Some of them are certified arborists, some are professional arborists, some are orchardists. So I've helped them out sometime in their career to get to where they're at right now. And I think the more professional companies we have in town, the better. And I'm so glad that Micah is here in town because he's a great educator. Thank you, Micah. Baby Gorilla's on here. I like him because he really knows how to prune trees, because he has a certified arborist on staff. And I called him today to see if that certified arborist is still on staff, but I don't know that. So that's really important. Who's on the crew? Because their crew is really important, how they care for your trees, okay? And please ask them all the questions that I might have talked about and more. You know, where'd you get the tree? How are you going to plant it? Is this the right spot? They may have that answer for you. Because, like I said, right tree, right place is really, really important. Okay? I have nurseries, Plants of the Southwest, Agua Fria, Petrie's. The best thing I can say about Petrie is, please talk to Patricia there. She's a certified arborist. So if you have to buy trees at Petrie's, go to her first, and she can get you in the right direction. I really appreciate Patricia being there. Okay, she's been a certified arborist, I think, for 7 or 9 years, so she's really good. Trees of Corrales, they now have a retail store in Albuquerque. That's kind of far to go to, but all those trees are grown on their property. Trees of Corrales grows 30,000 trees a year. And if you see a tree in a nursery or in Rio Grande Ace that has the tag, Trees of Corrales, buy that tree. Because that's a good source of a tree. Because they know what they're doing. They've been here. I knew the grower for about 40 years. He just retired. Well, he's doing part-time, but anyway. And they grow trees. I have a story in 2011, my last story, is in 2011, we had our first Arbor Day tree planting. So I got with Andrew, the grower at Trees of Corrales, and said, can I buy trees that I can plant bare root? He said, sure. The only problem is you're in Taos, and we get our supplies in March. Back in 2011, it was pretty cold in March. So anyway, I went ahead and I asked him to hold them for at least till April 1st. He did. So I got them up, and they're all bare root. So what I learned online from Cornell University, I got a big water trough for horses. And I put in this product called hydrogel and water. And what that does is you put the tree in there, and it hydrates the tree better. So when it came to planting trees at the end of April for Arbor Day, we took them out, and I bought, it's what they call gossick bags. You put the tree in the gossick bag, and then you plant it, so you can transport them without them drying out, the root system. So it's really good. So, and that worked. All the trees on the backside of trees of Kit Carson Park, which is now Red Willow Park, have been bare root, and all the spruces on that back property came from Gordon Tooley's from seed. I bought all those spruce trees from seed that Gordon Tooley grew for 3 or 5 years before I bought them. So this is a list of sources on the web, and you see the books on the bottom. I have Gordon Tooley's connection there, Tooley's Trees. I have Trees Are Good. That is the best source of finding different stuff for different tree questions. You can call the Arbor Day Foundation, ISA Arbor, the best book, and I just handed them out to my class. It's called the Tree Owner's Manual. It's out of print, but you can buy them from the ISA, okay? Then we have ISA Rocky Mountain chapter. That's a local chapter that goes from Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico. It's all 4 states, and that's a great source of asking them for certified arborists and tree questions. And you just call them or go online and try to connect with them. New Mexico, NPS-NM, I don't know what that is, but come on, that was a joke, come on. Okay, we know what that is. And then Tree New Mexico. And the neat thing about Tree New Mexico, they've been planting trees, hundreds of trees in Albuquerque. And they're now moving out from Albuquerque because the grants they're getting, they want to do different projects all over New Mexico. And it's a great source of trees because they started growing trees 3 to 5 years ago that was, it's called climate-ready trees. As our temperatures are changing, so are tree species that can grow here. So with that being said, they have this whole project. So I recommend you going online, trying to connect with them, and see if you can buy trees that they grow there to plant them up here for our zone and see, but you have to document if you get trees from them. They want to get information back to them to see if, say you plant a Western catalpa up here, see how it does and see how it survives. Okay, years ago they wouldn't survive here, but it could be a new, same with Arizona cypress tree. It's a blue-green tree, it's beautiful, it may grow here. Paul, do you know anything? Have you?
I think it's time to try them.
Yeah, okay, all right. Then I have here a PDF that's called Common Evergreen Pests and the book. So the last thing is me. If you have a tree question, email me to that address, send me a picture of the tree and the site, and then I can help you out even better, because if you send it or an email, I have a good computer, I can blow it up on my computer and I can really look at the tree. All right, I think that's it. Thank you, guys.